Welcome to On the Chain.
As investors, as citizens of this country, as citizens of other countries, investing in a space, sometimes you actually have rights that need to be protected. Sometimes the regulators are overreaching or overzealous to accomplish something that's in their own interest only, and maybe only based on uh, their own opinion, and that's it. Based on nothing else. But I find it interesting because here's an article that came out by Hester Peirce actually yesterday morning. And this is something that I think it's really important to reference, really critical to reference it, especially on the heels of the video that we just played. But here, one of the things that she's saying is that investors have the right to make their own decisions without regulators standing in the way. And really, if we think about, what are some of the ways that the regulators are standing in their way? Chip, Gary Gensler, he's not even like a road bump in the road. He's almost like those spikes when you go back to the rental car and you drive over the spikes and they say don't back up. That's Gensler. He's like the spikes in the middle of the road that come up.
I'm not gonna dispute that. You're spot on about that.
Yeah. So here's something that she said, and this should resonate because this is what you know they're supposed to be doing. This is the passion that we're referencing earlier. What does someone do when they have $120 million? They go out there and they go to help people, right? Look at what she says. An important part of my job is protecting investors from fraudsters who can do them much harm. She
Right.
should also say protecting investors from overreaching, overzealous regulators, politicians, right?
Well, she has, Jeff. I mean, at the blockchain association or the blockchain meetup, whatever it's called, the blockchain Texas blockchain conference they had, that was exactly what she said. Hey, what are we doing here? Are we protecting investors, or are we what are we doing? I mean, it's like she's absolutely right about that. And I just love how outspoken she's become. She was a little bit, when Gensler, I mean, before Gensler came to town, yeah, there was a lot of optimism by a lot of people in the space. But when Jay Clayton was there, I mean, one of the things Nancy Wotas talks about was there wasn't a lot of anything going on. They weren't going after tokens. Yeah, I mean, they went after the obvious initial coin offerings, right? That was pretty easy, open and closed, cut and dry. But they weren't really giving guidance, or they weren't really meeting with this group that they kind of said, hey, put something together and we'll ignore you. Kind of like how Gensler's ignored Hester Peirce's whole sort of, this both 1.0 and 2.0 of Safe Harbor.
That's it. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that here as well, because one of the things that you look at, like a Gary Gensler, and he's on his high horse and he doesn't believe, Chip, that you're smart enough to make your own investment decisions. Gary Gensler actually believes that since he taught at MIT, Chip, he knows more about your own individual personal investments than you do. I mean, how does that make you feel if you got this guy out there that's saying, Chip, you probably aren't smart enough to decide how you invest your hard-earned dollars. And by the way, I need to protect you from yourself, because you might make bad decisions and put all your money into a speculative asset. You might lose all your money. So, Chip, it's my job as the chair of the SEC to make sure that you don't invest your money in anything that might be considered risky.
Yeah, and you know what that's called, Jeff? Let me throw it up on the screen really quick here. It's called the Nanny State. Started as a British origin, conveys a view that the government or its policies are overprotective, interfering unduly with personal choice. The term likens a government to the role that a nanny has in child rearing. But the difference there is the child is young and cannot make decisions on his own. And what you mentioned there, Jeff, is that yes, indeed, as adults, we can basically make our own decisions. And what's going on, this is kind of where I think a lot of governments are headed. You are going to do X, you are going to do Y, and here's why you're going to do it, because we've got your best interest at heart. wink, wink. It's like, well, you know what? I'll tell you what. When it comes to investment, people go to Vegas every single day, Jeff. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? But people go to Vegas, they bet the farm, they go all in with the chips. They're like, I'm all in, and guess what happens? They lose everything. Who is protecting them? Who is going to protect them from themselves? And well, so what if they had about 14 or 15 scotches and they couldn't think for themselves? Sorry, they lost it all. There you go.
That's in Doug saying we live in a post-fascist totalitarian state, and you see the mindset. It's amazing to me. I think sometimes people need to visualize it. You have to see it to believe it, and now you see it, and hopefully you believe it.
And believe it to see it.
XRP speedboat. It was a boring day today. Even the markets were boring. After the show, I was thinking of setting the boat on fire just to liven up the day.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good idea in theory, but not in actuality. But who was that Bitlord that did that one time? He says that's it. I lost a couple $100,000. He lit fire to his apartment. Hey man, it's like
More-
chill out. He put out another series too that's actually pretty funny.
You get a little out of hand. So I like what Hester Peirce was saying here, Chip. Investment decisions are inherently personal. An investor's age, career opportunities, asset mix, family situation, cash flow, expenses, anticipated length of retirement, interest, personal conviction, risk tolerance, all play into whether a particular investment makes sense for a particular person at a particular time. Hopefully, Daddy G is listening because Daddy G doesn't know what's best for everyone else. He's made some good decisions. He found a way to finagle and earn $120 million. And so he's got a significant net worth. And I'm sure in the early days, he took big risks to get to where he got. But now he wants to tell everyone else, hey, now that he's made it, what maybe some of the paths that he took, and really some of the most successful people today failed in order to succeed. And what we're seeing a lot of today is they're trying to remove that failure component, which means that if you take that out, you'll never have successful people ever again, because there has to be some level of potential failure to push you to the next level. Chip, it's like kind of getting rid of the grade F in school. Sometimes you have to fail in school to wake up and say, I don't want to ever fail again. But could you imagine in school, they're like, no, you're never going to get an F. You're never going to be embarrassed. You're always just going to exist. Everybody's going to sit around in big circles and sing Kumbaya because they're just going to be happy and everything's going to be great. It's a utopian society that doesn't exist, because that's not the utopia I want to live in. I like the utopia where you have a chance of failure,
losing.
Success and failure.
Yeah, losing, like some of the best things, and I think everybody here too, if you look back in your life and you look at one of the times where it really screwed up, something bad happened, but you rose to the occasion and another door opened and something kind of cool happened. And that's kind of it. You'll never forget that. No matter how long you go on in life, you just won't. But sometimes you have to experience failure. And it's like, and if you don't have that failure or go down that deep, dark well or whatever it is, right? If you hit the ground and you go like, I'm at ground zero, but then, oh, wait, there's more bad things that can happen. That's when when things start picking up again. That's what you have this deep appreciation for. And you finally look back on those days as being really tough and everything, but you appreciate every minute of every second of the day. And one of the things that, having this fascist sort of state where everyone's going to choose what you're going to do. And it's like, it works great when you have a bunch of slaves. Like that's what they want people to be, slaves. You do this, you move that, you be told everything to do. But where's your freedom? Where's your freedom of choice? Where's your freedom as a human being? You don't have to ask for it. It's one of the greatest things in the Bill of Rights in the U.S. It's like you're born free, man. You answer to nobody. You might answer to God, but you do not answer to another human being. And up until that point, in the 1700s, late 1700s, it had always been filled with dictators. And Joe Rogan, we played that speech, always dictators, right? Or fiefdoms, where the king and the queen, that's what we're getting. Like the king and the queen will tell best what's right for their kingdom. When you can eat well, it's a food shortage this year. We'll have all our food. But you, kind sir and kind madam, you will be eating on Tuesdays and Thursdays and maybe one of the weekend days. But don't worry. we're going to be healthy to rule over you, right? So this is kind of the thing we get to. And I wanted to put this up here because I thought this was a great comment by Jim D. He said, Hester Peirce has amazing courage, fearless. I hope she can avoid career attack by her superiors. And I
You
think
won't be able to avoid it.
yeah, I don't know if you can avoid it, but I don't think she cares at this point. I think she's really, I mean, I think she doesn't really care. I mean, do you think so, Jeff? Do you think she does care?
No, I think she cares. I think everybody has a level of caring, but at the end of the day, I think she's willing to fail to succeed. She's willing
Correct.
to continue to do what's right. So
Right.
she might be afraid of what could potentially happen, but at this point, she's willing to sacrifice everything to do what's right. And I'm hearing that a lot lately. We're seeing that across the board. We're seeing people saying, look, I'm going to risk it all because this is the time to do it. You have to do it because otherwise you're not going to have anything to risk. So it's now or never. And yeah, so I agree with that.
Yeah, risk reward. So
Yep.
EC 2189 KQ, thank you for the support. He says they're not gods, but they like to think themselves to be. Yet when it comes down to it, look who has the actual power, stake and
Yep.
responsibility, us. And that's why I always say we the people, because it's one of the most important documents. Starts out we the people. We the people. When I use that, I talk about us in crypto. I talk about us as humans on the planet, occupying the third stone from the sun called Earth. That's what we are. We the people. And you know what they don't want you to know? They don't want you to know you're the majority. And they don't want you to know that they're an extreme minority. And we're starting to see some of those walls kind of come down and collapse. We're seeing them in various countries. I look at Rome, what they were doing. I look at some other, I look at down under what they're doing over there. People aren't sitting down. They're not going to take it. Why should they? They're living great lives. And to have that ripped out of their hands? No, Jeff. They're not going to sit quietly in a corner and say, sure, what else could possibly do? That's a really nice comment, EC. Appreciate that.
I really like that comment. And Chip, I think if you look out your window, you might see Gary and his gang leading people over the cliff. Here, let me just show you what's going on outside the window here.
That's awesome.
So check this out. So while we were talking, I highlighted a couple other sentences here from Hester. One of them: consequently, investment decisions are best made by an investor or an advisor with a deep understanding of the investor's circumstances and financial needs, not by a regulator seeking to act in what it perceives to be the typical investor's best interest. Kind of what we're talking about, right? And this is Gary, and this was Senator Kennedy saying, Gary, do you believe that you're their daddy? Talking about these financial institutions and corporations on how he's behaving, and he started getting really nervous. But here she went on: because a regulator cannot know each individual's complex mix of circumstances, she cannot decide which investments are good for which investor or when. For which investors when.
Right.
A regulator who attempts to do so is essentially saying that she can look from afar at an investor's life and decide what securities are best for that investor. And then this definitely goes on, more and more in depth, because look at this: because of the inherent limitations on what it can know about particular investors, the SEC would do well to resist the urge to engage in financial planning by regulation. Now, what does that tell us about her thought process of how Daddy G is presenting himself, Chip?
Well, I got to say how bold this op-ed is. It's extremely well written. I think I've read it twice already. It is so well thought out and put together. And it's really, if you're trying to illustrate a point, I love what she's talking about here, Jeff, because she's saying that we don't need regulators, ticking every box for you. It's like, I'm sorry, Miss, Chip, what else do you need? Be careful when you drive, or you're going to do, I mean, the overreach is incredible. And it's what she's elegantly pointing out without saying it's overreach. But it's so obvious from the point she's making. A really well done op-ed by Hester Peirce.
That's it. And here, I thought this one was interesting, but government should be wary of overriding the choices of individual liberty. Regulators have a role to play, but that role should always be carried out with humility and a realization that investors have a right to make their own decisions, regardless of what regulators think of them. I like this idea that she threw in humility, and she's really putting this article together, you can tell, with a person in mind.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.